Today, we're going to be tying up a streamer pattern that would be a great choice to use in the winter. To start, we'll grab some lead-free wire. Here I'm using 0.25, securing it to our hook shank by wrapping it around in place several times, starting with the tip section so we don't waste any before grabbing the other end and wrapping it around as many or as few times as you'd like before pushing it into our tungsten conehead bead to help hold it in place. You can choose to secure it here, or if you'd rather, you can continue to add more wraps to increase the fly's weight. I get asked a lot how much weight you should add to a pattern, and it's completely dependent on what you're using the fly for. If you need it to sink quickly, add more weight, but if you're just swinging it through the current and don't mind it sitting a few feet under, then you could tie this exact same pattern without any weight at all, so it's completely up to you. In this case, we're going to be dredging the bottom. With this complete, we'll create a thread dam just behind our wire wraps to help hold it in place, as well as taking several thread wraps all throughout it to ensure it stays tightly in place. At which point, we'll wrap our thread towards the back of our hook shank and grab some crystal flash. Here I'm using a UV blue. Secure it tightly in place to one side of your hook shank before folding it over and securing it to the other. At which point, we'll trim it to length before grabbing some brassy blue wire. We'll snip a small section free, bring our thread forward, and secure it tightly to our hook shank, wrapping back towards our tail. At which point, we'll set the wire aside and grab some Flashabou. Here I'm using a holographic silver. We'll snip several segments free, bringing our thread forward, and once again, securing up towards our cone, before securing it tightly and wrapping back towards our tail. We'll then set it aside and grab a zonker strip. Here I'm using black. We'll measure it out so the leather of the tail is going to stick out about a hook shank's in length. With this measurement complete, we'll separate the fibers, and if you want to make it easier, you can simply wet your fingers to help the fur stay in place. Once complete, we'll use this gap to secure the leather tightly to our hook shank before folding it over and wrapping on top of it to further secure it and push it out of the way for our following steps. Once complete, we'll lay an even thread base, working up towards our cone for our next step. And if you'd like to win this fly, you can comment #flies in the comments below. And if you don't win, you can always visit my website or submit a custom order, and I'd be happy to tie some up for you. Once we reach our cone, we'll grab our Flashabou and begin wrapping it forward in close touching spirals, being sure not to leave any gaps as we work our way forward, and continuing to do so until we reach our thread. At which point, we'll secure the Flashabou tightly in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, before snipping our excess free. We'll then paint it over with some UV resin. Here I'm using solar res in a thin viscosity. We'll use a brush to help smooth this over our Flashabou. Before grabbing our UV light and fixing it in place. At which point, we'll grab our zonker strip, fold it back over, and secure it tightly in place at the head of our fly. If you have any excess, you can always trim it away. I just happened to pick up a scrap piece that was a perfect fit for this fly. With this secured tightly in place, we'll wrap back on it slightly, giving us a bit of room to build up a collar. But before we do so, we'll grab our blue wire and begin to wrap it forward in open spirals. Each wrap will wrap around the body and up over the leather to help hold it in place. Not only will this add a better look, but it'll also make the zonker strip extremely durable. We'll continue doing so until we reach our thread. At which point, we'll secure it tightly in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire, before helicoptering your excess free. We'll then grab some blue feathers that we're going to use to make a collar, measuring the fibers so they reach about towards our hook point, before stripping the excess free and securing it just in front of our zonker strip. Once secured tightly in place, you'll snip your excess free. Grab your feather, brushing the fibers backwards, wrapping it forward, in close touching spirals just in front of our zonker strip, and doing so until we reach the cone. At which point, secure it tightly in place, once again, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snipping your excess free. We'll then wrap back on it slightly to help brush it back and leave some room for our next step. We'll then grab some guinea feathers. Here I'm using a light blue, but it also has a great pattern that consists of some black that'll help give this fly a unique look, while also sticking with the color palette. We'll trim the tips into a little triangle and use this to secure it just in front of our blue collar, at which point we'll grab our guinea feather, pulling the fibers backwards and wrapping it just in front of our other collar. Secure it tightly in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snip your excess free, at which point you can either whip finish, or if you like, grab some blue dubbing. Create a dubbing noodle, and wrapping this just in front of your collar and your bead, both to help brush back your collar, but also give it a bit of a buggy look. With this complete, whip finish to hold it all together. Snip your thread free, and of course, brush it out to give it a nice, buggy look. And this is an extremely heavy leech pattern that I'll be throwing in my Steelhead box. And while it makes a great winter fly choice, the black and blue color would also be a great choice in dark or dirty waters. So thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next.